Touchstone Pictures. On October 1st, midnight, Tim Burton brings you the movie event of the year.
Transvestites. I need transvestites.
What kind of a movie is this?
Johnny Depp is director Ed Wood.
You flying saucer?
See the true story of an unforgettable filmmaker
I like to dress in women's clothing.
at a special midnight sneak preview.
Oh, I'm all man. I even fought in WW2. Of course, I was wearing women's undergarments under my uniform.
Ed Wood, rated R. Midnight sneak preview this Saturday in select cities.
Hey now everybody, welcome to a special episode of the Movie Mavericks podcast. I'm going to send you over to Jason Rugard. He's going to let us know what is the one thing that if you put it in a movie, it'll be a success.
Boobs.
Tits.
I was trying to be family friendly.
Tits. Okay, now, what am I saying? It's better than tits. It's a star.
It's a star. We're talking, of course, about Ed Wood, the Tim Burton reimagining his love letter to B movies that came out in 1994 and absolutely bombed. In the tradition of Ed Wood himself and his films, it tanked at the box office, making almost no money, being the lowest grossing film of his and basically of Johnny Depp's career as far as wide releases go. And I think it's my favorite film in both of their catalogs. Where does Ed Wood stand with you?
Yeah, it's a great movie. I like it.
I mean, your enthusiasm is much like Ed Wood's in this movie. And that's what I like about this character, his eternal optimism, right, in the face of everything going wrong. And I don't know if that's true to the actual person himself, but the spirit of the movie and the character is perfectly embodied in this.
It almost has to be, though. To some degree, when you watch him in this movie, he is spurring people on, though. He's, a little like that's nice. Mr. Wood, I only got 1 hour of sleep last night. Well, that's great. I got none, and I'm doing great. Get on in there. Let's get to work. So it's kind of it's a little bit of yeah. You're right. Like we don't need to get any extra footage. We don't need to get any sort of safety shots. Like we got it. We're good. Moving on. That's definitely Ed Wood, but a little bit of the we got to get this shit done type of a guy as well, right? Which is good because when you're on a micro budget. You just got to get the damn movie done, right? You
got to get it in the can. And this guy, say what you want about him, but he did film these movies in their entirety and sold them. And years later, I mean, this came out in the 1990s, so roughly 40 years after these movies were being made, they were still talking about him. And here we are another 30 years later, and we're talking about it now. So Ed Wood lived a hell of a life. The real guy, World War II veteran, cross-dresser, filmmaker, maybe the worst director of all time, they say in a laughing manner, but I've seen much worse films. And we were talking about a gentleman
obviously
before this podcast, we will go unnamed, and in his filmography, and it's much worse.
Yeah, I've seen many a worse movie than Ed Wood. In fact, if you think any of Ed Wood's movies are the worst movies ever made, you don't watch enough movies. And by movies, I mean, shit that you can buy off of a weird website. In 2024 still, that nobody knows about because you can only get to it from Facebook, and it's, it's a Kanaki. It's Kanaki. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
It's bizarre, and I know exactly who you are talking about.
Bert on demand,
Let's talk about the films, though, of the films of Ed Wood. Have you ever seen them? Have you ever seen Glenn or Glenda, Plan 9 from Outer Space?
Absolutely.
I've never seen them. Are they worth my time?
What?
I've never actually watched them.
Well, I mean, okay, but you know what they are. What can I say? Are they worth anyone's time? I don't know what to say, No. I mean, none of them are worth anyone's time, but if you like, B movies, then yeah, they're great. And they're perfectly of their time. Like, they're definitely 50s B movies, like Bride of the Monster.
Bride
of the Atom.
Isn't that one of his movies?
It's Bride of the Monster, right? I think is the actual.
Was it the name that they pivoted to ultimately? I always thought it was Bride of the Atom because it was the whole atom bomb deal.
Right. Well, but I don't think that's what they call. I mean, you're right. In this movie, they call it that. They may have called it that when they made it. To be fair, things get renamed. It's listed on here as Bride of the Monster, but. Could have been called, originally titled Bride of the Atom or The Monster of the Marshes.
Different territories had different titles back then when it traveled the country.
They would just change a name for whatever. It was all marketing purpose, especially at this level, you know. But all these movies are out there, available, right? I mean, VHS. I own a couple of these on VHS. What do I have on VHS?
They're probably in the public domain now, right? So there's a lot of different releases of them.
I'm not sure who owns the rights to these. I mean, someone probably owns the rights to them.
Well, I had not
they
seen
are
these.
Readily available. They're on YouTube, I guarantee you.
I did some YouTube comparisons after I watched this for our podcast, and it's unprecedented how much they got right. I don't know if they filmed at some of those same locations or what, but the house that Bella's at is spot on. Jeffrey Jones's character of Griswold, the magician, the mystic. He's fantastic. He's spot on as well. But having seen this in the 1990s, we didn't have YouTube to do the comparison and contrasting the similarities. So I just took this at face value for what it was, and I just got caught up in the, let's put on a show aspect of this, and the fact that this guy created this oddball family around him of outcasts and misfits, and somehow used it as this traveling company to work behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And that's really what won me over in this movie was the, let's go put on a show aspect with these fucking freaks and geeks, really.
It's got that Bowfinger type feel to it, which is interesting that they are so close together in release.
This was written by Scott Alexander and Larry Krasawiecki. That's a hard name to pronounce. When they were students at USC, and this is on the Wikipedia page, but I have a friend that was classmates with them, and I was telling you that this was their thesis project. And Michael Lehman, who was also a filmmaker and a classmate of theirs at the time, executive produced this. And when this got bought, it was pretty big news for these guys, apparently. And in that class, they were one of the first ones to hit. The class also had Phil Janot in it, who would do State of Grace and Gridiron Gang, among other things. So this was a pretty popular class that went on to do a lot of work. And these guys would also go on to later write A Man on the Moon, the Jim Carrey biopic of Andy Kaufman. So this was their first biopic, and it was an absolute disaster in terms of money being brought in. I mean, so much so that Tim Burton pivoted to Mars Attacks, which is, maybe his most, I like it, but I think it's a very middle of the road Tim Burton movie. And Johnny Depp went over and does Nick of Time, trying to do a bid for like action hero stardom, which just did not work. So did this movie, you think, hurt their career ultimately in your eyes, or do you think that it's a gem to them? I wonder how they look back on it.
I mean, it didn't cost anything to make, so I don't see how it hurt them at all. It was more of a project they wanted to make, and I guarantee it's Hollywood. Making a movie about Hollywood, and yeah, it's outside Hollywood, but it's really inside Hollywood, right? I mean, everyone knows who Ed Wood is, and certainly Hollywood is going to love a movie about a filmmaker who loves movies. That's just Hollywood, right?
And Tim Burton was attached to do a different movie at the time, something called Mary Riley. Did you ever see that movie? Julia Roberts?
With Julia Roberts? No.
I saw it not that long ago, and it's better than I thought it was going to be. It's actually really nicely done. Kind of a gothic romance deal.
Yeah, I've seen... Yeah, it looks good.
And he dropped out of that project to take on this project because he was so enamored with Ed Wood. And
wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And in the end,
I think so.
This is a perfect match to Tim Burton's sensibilities, I think, as a creative, from the production design to the look.
Well, it's the most, you say that, but it's the most subdued Tim Burton movie, that he's made, probably, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of another one.
Yeah, I would say this and maybe Big Fish is fairly straightforward.
Nah, Sleepy Hollow, I think, is probably less than that. But Sleepy Hollow still has like weird things. Like he has apparatuses and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that movie is at least shot straightforward. Big Fish still feels
fantastical,
more Tim Burton-y especially than Ed Wood. Like this movie, the way this movie's shot to look like a 50s black and white film, right? And it does so perfectly. Like it's wonderfully lit and shot. But yeah, this could be in and of itself like an Ed Wood movie.
And the black and white is captures this perfectly.
Necessary.
Yeah, absolutely necessary. Super necessary, right?
That's what I'm saying. It looks exactly like a B movie from the 50s.
To the score by Danny Elfman, whose also sensibilities are perfectly used here.
We're using like theremin. We're definitely using 50s music and instruments and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And the back lot sets look even more. I mean, this whole time period looks even more glamorous when it's in black and white for some reason. The sunglasses look cooler. The cigarettes, the smoke in the room,
the cars,
everything. Everything looks a little bit more cinematic, if you will. And that coupled with that, they're making a movie about cinema on a low level, but you're seeing high level filmmaking in all production departments about this low level filmmaker. And the juxtaposition of that always, it actually delights me when I watch the movie of that.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of work to as you said earlier, but the amount of work to match the original films and all that, but that stuff, some of that is like the best parts of the film, right? I mean, when Landau gives that first Glenn or Glinda speech, like in this movie, when he finally sits down and he's like, "I'm ready for it," and he does his monologue, whatever. It's like, holy shit,
we got a professional here, right?
Yeah, it's at that moment we realize, oh. Yeah, that's Oscar winning.
Which I want to get up to. I'm glad you brought that up. So Martin Landau was the Oscar winner for the Best Supporting Actor in the 1994 Academy Awards for this role. And some felt that it was not necessarily for this role, but for an overall career because he was getting later on in life and they wanted to award him. That's always been the knock when they give it to, an Oscar to an older actor like Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven was guilty of that, they said. But the big forerunner that year was Samuel L. Jackson for Pulp Fiction. But that was a very heavy year. I want to say Morgan Freeman was also up for Best Supporting Actor for Shawshank Redemption. There was a lot of heavy hitters in that category, and they gave it to Landau. And at the time, I hadn't seen Ed Wood, and I thought, oh man, I was rooting for Jackson.
Our next presenter is only 12 years old and has already won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. You know, when I was 12, I could drink a gallon of root beer in under a minute. Thank you. Here now to present the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, please welcome Anna Paquin.
Thank you. The nominees are Samuel L. Jackson, Pulp Fiction, Martin Landau, and Ed Wood, Chaz Palminteri, and Bullets Over Broadway, Paul Schofield, and Quiz Show, Gary Sinise, and Forrest Gump. And the Oscar goes to Martin Landau and Ed Wood.
My God. What a night, what a life, what a moment, what everything. I talked to Tim Burton today in New York, and I want to finish the conversation. Thanks, Tim, for giving me the part of my life. Bill Cates, don't put music on, because if it's a Mission Impossible theme, I'll get very angry. Larry and Scott, thanks for the great script. The Disney people for doing it in the first place. You know, I think everyone who saw the movies in this room tonight, and thank you for their support. Johnny Depp, thank you for your talent, your professionalism, your goodness. A great cast down the line. Gave me a chance to work with my daughter for the first time. Rick, V, and Yolanda, who have already won an award tonight for making it all possible for me. The members of the press, particularly Rod Lurie, who is my #1 fan in the press and has been an avid supporter for years. The Academy, the actors, who I love, who nominated me, the entire membership. Let's keep the NEA funded and healthy. Artists need encouragement.
Then I watched this movie about a year later, and I have no problem with him getting the Oscar for this movie. I love his performance in this. It's
an amazing performance. Like, just watch that
best
one
of his
scene.
career. Yeah, it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, it's like, wow. Like, I myself, Ed Wood is sitting there going like, holy smokes, you know? And yeah, that's exactly the reaction that you had, you know, as it played. You're like, wow, powerful.
The best lines in the movie, as far as I'm concerned, are given to Landau. And you and I always quote the, let's shoot this fucker ready, right?
Right. Let's shoot this fucker. Yeah.
I mean, you and I have been quoting that for the last 20 years. I mean, it's one of my favorite things. But another one that always cracks me up is when they first meet Landau and Depp, and they're driving in the car, and he's talking about, why aren't you in movies anymore? And he says, nobody gives two fucks for Bella. I mean, that always cracks me up when he says that. And it sums up the guy's career, his outlook, you know, his overall demeanor in mood and life. And the compelling part of this movie, too, looking at it now, is that the first half is all about this one movie being made. Really, the first hour of the movie is preoccupied with the Glenn or Glenda stuff. And then, you know, Landau is drug addiction and things. The second and third movie that are being produced and trying to get financing is the back half. But it's even more precedent today, right?
But those are the most well-known and I think probably the most interesting movies that he's made, right? Glenn or Glenda, you know, Bride of the Monster or Adam, and of course Plan 9. And most of the other stuff just like it's okay, but it's not like those are the main ones. Mm-hmm. Those are the main three. He did stuff in between. There was like that Jailbait movie, which is not as okay. You know, I don't know what to say about it other than those three movies are stretches for trying to do something, I don't know, special, I guess, but clearly incapable of it.
His ambition outweighed his reach, or right out of his grasp, you know.
Yeah,
just
I mean, all of his movies definitely do that. Like, he definitely writes bigger than he's capable of capturing.
And, you know, Tim Burton is a guy whose ambition was large, but he was able to capitalize on that ambition. So to me, once again, his fascination with this guy, with the methods being used, and then I think he, in my opinion, a lot of this carries on to Mars Attacks with the saucers and the, you know, the glamorizing of that 1950s, 1960s science fiction B movie. Even if it's a Topps trading card in Mars Attacks, it seems like he was still taking the Ed Wood approach to that movie in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But it like spiritually similar, if they will. The love stories here, do they work for you? There's two different loves of his life in this movie. There's Sarah Jessica Parker's character, who's a little less understanding of his proclivities, and then there is the Patricia Arquette character, who becomes, I guess, the love of his life ultimately, and is very open to who he is as a person. Although, to be fair, the Sarah Jessica Parker character was a lot more tolerant than I had recalled her being in previous viewings when I watched this again. It's not until, you know, late in the film that she finally has enough with the whole thing. And I don't think it's necessarily...
That's like halfway through, I'd say.
But do you think it's Wood that she has a problem with, or just the whole traveling circus of just chaos?
Well, they were, I mean, they were definitely kind of stepped around that and put a lot onto that character. I have no idea in real life. But this movie definitely piles a bunch on her. And when she finally does break up with him, it's more than just him, right? But it is everything, as you say. It's the movie, and she in some way as well took a back seat to the film, and obviously showing her demotion in the part, right?
I love that sequence.
Yeah, so she's just upset all around, you know, and he's not the person that he was at the beginning of the movie anymore, right? He's I don't know, he's reborn as a weird transvestite, low budget filmmaker, right? Which is not, I don't think, what she planned on him being or being with, right?
And somebody who's willing to throw her under the bus at any given time.
For the movie, yeah. I mean, that as well. That's why I'm saying it gives her a little bit of an edge, a little bit of something to say, like, oh, it's not just these things. Like, you also screwed me over. You also put me second to this, you know, which he did. So,
and does. And doesn't do to his second wife or the second love nearly as much as he does to the first. So maybe that's why they stuck around. But what cracks me up in this movie is that Depp's character and his people are so supportive and happy of what's happening. And then he comes in contact with people in reality or the gatekeepers, and they're so harsh with him that it's exactly how you'd be looking at this person or saying to this person if they showed you their film. You know, the Mike Starr character, who's the distributor, cracks me up. The fact that Ed Wood, who's also a manipulator and a con artist and a bit of a snake himself to get things done, when he leverages his landlord to get him to finance a film so that they can ultimately make enough money to make their movies about the apostles that they want to, is a nice sequence in there. But if you really break that down, Wood is totally conning this man just to get some money out of him. If somebody wanted to make a darker, warts-all documentary or movie about him, they probably could have. But this is a very loving, glowing look back at the man, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't really cover... I mean, obviously he's pretty prolific for not just a filmmaker, but he wrote like a shitload of books, right? And like little novellas and stuff, and just all... I don't know, just maybe a workaholic.
I want to know if Lobo would have that problem every day in real life of walking into the wall.
Walking into the wall.
I mean,
well, you know, it's real. It's real.
No,
I bet he does.
I bet he would struggle with that every day.
Yeah, I think it's real, and that's how it would be for him.
Let's take a quick break and listen to Siskel and Ebert's review of Ed Wood.
Ah, yes. Plan 9 deals with the resurrection of the dead. Long-distance electrodes shot into the pineal and pituitary glands of the recent dead.
You know, maybe you guys were right. Plan 9 is a good title.
That's Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, an energetic young film director in the 1950s who stopped at nothing to create some of the worst, most laughable pictures of all time. And this movie called Ed Wood, directed by the always inventive Tim Burton, is simply marvelous. It's one of the great movies about movie making. It's in love with filmmaking and the directing impulse. I really like this picture. I think it should be required viewing in every film school in America. And why? Because it's about a guy who loves his work despite all the roadblocks put in front of him. Ed Wood is presented here as a cheerful, decent, slightly weird optimist. I love this guy. Here he is getting ready to direct one of his low-budget specials, and his fiancée, Sarah Jessica Parker, is steamed that he gave the key roles to would-be actors who gave Ed money to get the film made in the first place.
See, the usual gang of misfits and dope addicts are here.
Janet, I want you straight...
Say, who's the lug?
I want you staying away from the old Willow's place.
Why, that's Tony McCoy. He will be portraying Lieutenant Dick Craig.
Really? How much money did he put up?
None. But his dad gave me 50 grand.
Wood Production's the mark of quality.
One of the strangest things about Ed Wood, he liked to dress in women's clothing. He played a cross-dresser in his first feature film, the cult classic Glen or Glenda.
And cut! Print that. Let's move on.
Don't you want a second take for protection?
What's to protect? It was perfect. Come on.
Ed Wood accepted the first take almost every time, always saying, it's perfect. He didn't have time or money to waste, and I also think he just loved making any shot.
Let's move on.
Don't you want to do another take, Ed? Looks like Big Baldy had a little trouble getting through the door.
No, it's fine. It's real. You know, in actuality, Lobo would have to struggle with that problem every day.
One of the best parts of the movie is the real-life friendship that developed between young Ed and veteran horror star Bela Lugosi, who late in his life was a drug addict rescued by Ed's undying admiration. Martin Landau is dead-on brilliant as Lugosi.
Mr. Lugosi, why are you buying a car?
I'm planning on dying soon.
Ed is so passionate about making movies, he'll do anything to raise funds. Anything. Even get his goofy troupe of misfit actors to undergo a group baptism so that some wealthy Baptists will finance Ed's science fiction opus, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Bill Murray is one of the troupe. And wait till you see the loving recreation of Plan 9. Ed Wood is filmed in gorgeous black and white that is a tribute to the 50s and to the black and white movies of Ed Wood. This film is just beautiful to look at, photographed by Stefan Zapsky. Ed Wood's movies were so bad they had to be made by a man who loved his work. They were innocent fun, and this movie called Ed Wood is a tribute to creative passion and also to friendship. I loved every single bit of it, and I hope that it will inspire people interested in making films to follow their dreams and not just view movie making as a way to make money. Congratulations all the way around on this picture. It's one of the year's very best.
Well, you know, Gene, I share your delight, and I also enjoyed every moment of this movie. You know, one of the key things in the movie, I think, is the way that Johnny Depp finds the right tone for the performance. Because when I heard about this project involving this notorious cross-dresser, Ed Wood, who made these terrible films, I thought it was going to be some kind of a smarmy put-down. But actually, I didn't take into account Tim Burton, who I've met a couple times. He has a very sweet, optimistic, positive personality, and a lot of that is reflected in Johnny Depp's performance as Ed Wood. I mean, he's such a positive guy.
Yes.
You can't put him down. At one point, somebody says to him, "Are you a homosexual?" And he says, "No, I'm a cross-dresser."
Yeah.
He's just so happy to share whatever it is with whoever wants to talk to him.
A couple of stories. Once when I started as a film critic, somebody said to me, you know, there's this old story about this producer who would applaud at the end of every movie.
Yes.
Because he knew how hard it was to get any movie made.
Yes.
That's the spirit of this picture. And the other thing is, I once had George Lucas tell me, he said, you know, you can divide the directors of the world into those who like people and those who don't. It's an interesting way to think about movies. Tim Burton loves people, and he loves this character.
He loves people. He also loves monsters from outer space.
Okay, obviously they're very enthusiastic about the movie, and I think that anybody that really watches this movie, I don't know anyone that's seen this movie that dislikes it. I mean, they might not love it as much as you and I do, or like it as much as you and I do, but no one dislikes this movie. And I have a question here. Do you recall?
It's black and white.
True, but you know, it's beautifully shot.
I'm sure kids nowadays are not going to like it.
I'm surprised this hasn't gotten a resurgence with its subject matter, to be honest with you. And the fact that they changed the box art. I don't know if you've noticed this here. The box art that we have on a digital version has the Sarah Jessica Parker character handing her Agora sweater, of course Agora, because he has a bit of a fetish for Agora sweaters, to Depp's character. And I don't remember ever seeing that poster on any incarnation of the box art before. It was him in a director's chair, black and white, and then there was a really shitty Photoshop box that had some color in it on the VHS release.
I don't know.
I don't recall this poster ever being anywhere, and I thought, well, if they're trying to rebrand it here or push an aspect of it, I'm surprised.
I mean, the DVD. Well, I mean, I've seen the DVD with that on it before.
With that box art.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it was out there. Then I had not recognized that before. I don't remember that.
I'm trying to remember when. Because there's it was a special edition, right? I don't know. Were there two editions? Was there a regular? Yes. There was. Okay, then the special edition whenever that came out. This is the cover art to that.
Okay, that makes sense then. There was a. I mean, it was. Do you remember the whole? There's some backstory on it that there was an initial DVD release of Ed Wood that was supposed to come out in 2002 and was postponed because it had a featurette on transvestites, not relating to the film, but it was subsequently that featurette was removed from any further editions and was reset for February 3rd, 2003.
Why? What was it about? What was in it?
I don't know. It said it had nothing, not related to the film or its actors in any way. So I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure it's on the.
I mean, in that case, I'm fine with it being removed, but I don't know why it would be there to begin with.
Apparently, it was recalled without explanation, and some copies are still out there available on eBay.
That seems weird. I don't see why it would be recalled. I don't really understand why you would remove it,
and then
I don't understand why you would put it there anyways.
Yeah.
Well, if it has nothing to do with a movie.
The movie cost $18 million to make and opened on October 7th, 1994, ultimately grossing worldwide just under $14 million. So
no one was paid to be in this fucking movie.
No. And it was a financial failure in the domestic and worldwide box office, but I imagine it's at least, with Hollywood accounting, it's probably still in the red.
Home video releases, I mean... yeah, it's had to have made millions of dollars. Millions, couple million. I don't know.
What I recall about the Johnny Depp thing here is that this was before Pirates. I know younger listeners only probably know him from that and thought he was huge.
What do you mean there's before Pirates?
The 21 Jump Street era had come and gone. And then there's a series of movies he does that I felt like...
Really dating yourself now.
I know, right? Listen to these movies I'm going to bring up. There's a series of movies that come out and that really start showing Johnny Depp as being a solid actor, but maybe of like independent or low budget movies in the What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
I mean, that's what he wanted to do, right?
Right. Benny and June, I think, is fantastic as well.
Sure, Crybaby.
I mean, I'm never a fan of Crybaby, to be honest with you. I was in...
well, you know what? It still fits into what you're saying. So,
yeah, but he is acting his ass off in that. But these are the movies that were leading up to this, where you're like, this movie, apparently people saw that he was a great actor, but I felt like he had already established that, particularly with the two I just mentioned there, with Gilbert Grape and Benny and June.
I don't know, because I don't think these movies are. Well, I don't know how to relate this to this, in modern day, times now, because these movies obviously don't exist now necessarily. If any of this stuff came out, it would go nowhere, but I don't know that it went anywhere back then. I mean, we all knew What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but that nobody knows that. And that's not a big movie. It wasn't even a big movie back then. How did everyone know it?
It had DiCaprio. It had Depp. I mean, it had a great story.
No. It did. I mean, no one knew DiCaprio.
True. They just knew that act. They knew that character.
So nobody knew shit, right? But that was a big movie. It was a big movie.
It was.
And at least in the zeitgeist, in the culture, like we all knew that movie. But that wasn't a big movie. Like I don't think that made or broke anyone. So it's weird that you say that, because you're right. It definitely is an establishing moment for him. But I don't know. Is it more important what comes after that?
Well,
right, like Don Juan de Marco. I mean, what comes after that? Dead Man? That's fucking for sure nothing.
Awful.
You already mentioned
Don
Nick of Time.
Nick of Time.
I mean, Donnie Brasco is like the only thing I can think of. There's the next big, like, oh, Johnny Depp can act.
Right. And then after that, you have...
And then obviously, you got the big one, right?
Well, you got Sleepy Hollow, which was a big hit.
Well, you got Fear and Loathing. Don't pass it over.
Oh, Fear and Loathing is...
People love Fear and Loathing. And Ninth Gate, which is a sleeper, and everyone should watch it.
It is, but it's not.
As well as The Astronaut's Wife.
I was going to say The Astronaut's Wife is a dud. Let's be honest.
Astronaut's Wife. Well, we can be honest. You're right, but everyone should still watch it. And then Sleepy Hollow, which everyone liked.
From Hell, which I actually think is underrated.
Yeah, From Hell's pretty good.
And Blow, which is fucking certified fantastic. I was just going to
say that one. There's another one in there. There was Chocolat.
I never saw Chocolat.
Neither did I, but it was huge. As far with the women,
exactly right.
With a certain crowd, he knew what he was doing with that one. Yeah,
it was kind of like a Don Juan type look and type deal.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't remember Don Juan being that big. It's weird to name all these movies, because these movies are not known at all really today, but everyone knew these movies back in the day.
Yeah,
But think of equivalents of these that would come out now that would have the notoriety of these. The idea that even this list is a list of decent movies, is insane today. Like this, if this was your career today, you'd be nothing.
Right, because there's ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and we're not even talking about The Libertine and things like that absolutely just fell apart and never even really made a dent. There's a ton.
No,
of
I'm just talking about big big acting movies. There's no big acting movies, right? There's none. Who's a big actor that's done movies like this? I can't think of anything.
Think about what happens like even after Pirates hits. You have A Secret Window, which does okay.
Oh God, yeah, I forgot.
Right? It's I mean, he has movies that never really take off, like The Tourist. I mean, there's a whole bunch in there that are mixed in.
Which was a huge failure, obviously.
That never took off.
I mean, you're right. He's not really outside of Pirates of the Caribbean, but again, he's not a bankable star, I guess you would say. But you do have Pirates of the Caribbean. That's where everyone knows him from. And so, movies today, if you have a Pirates of the Caribbean, obviously you're a hit. But what I'm trying to say is, back then, 30 years ago, right? Pirates of the Caribbean is relatively still newer.
20 years, yeah. It's
Does it
20 years
count
old.
as being kind of newish? Yeah, but the last one wasn't like
It's about 6 or 7 years
it was
ago.
within this era of filmmaking, right? Like that movie, that franchise kind of crosses.
It's
the
still
boundary
recognizable.
there. But if you go back 30 years, even before Pirates of the Caribbean, he was somehow still a star.
You're
but
right.
He had. But what was his big movie like that? None. There was nothing.
Yeah, he didn't.
But these movies, altogether, somehow these movies make a star.
They make a career at least because you've been with this person at this point. You know,
So,
by the time
you could not have that right now at all.
By the time Pirates hits 2003, Johnny Depp had been on TV since 1987. So he'd been in the cultural zeitgeist for 16 years at that point, and then his star rises. So it was kind of like this was our guy, you know. And then at the time, I didn't think he was any bigger than, let's say, a Christian Slater, you know, who obviously
we passed over. We didn't mention Scissorhands, obviously. But that would have been
that was a big stepping stone too.
I think, if I'm really being honest, that's probably the big moment, right? Because that's the moment he was obviously. What would you call them? Teen crush? I don't know what the hell you would call
teen
them.
beat type stuff, like
for that.
Yeah.
You know, a heartthrob before, but Edward Scissorhands really. God, the girls went crazy for Edward Scissorhands. Figure that shit out.
Rightly so. I mean, it's a great movie to this day. It's one of my favorite movies, but I still prefer Ed Wood over Ed Scissorhands in terms of viewing, repeat viewing. And Depp was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance as Ed Wood in this movie. So he didn't get the Oscar nom, but he did get the Golden Globe nomination.
He got the Globe.
Yeah, and didn't win, but he did get the.
No.
You know what? I gotta make a correction. It's not Danny Elfman who did the music to this. It's Howard Shore. So I do have to go back and because it's so Elfman-like, unbelievable,
that's interesting.
right?
I didn't even
because it sounds like an Elfman score.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. I mean, it's fine. Howard Shore's great.
Now Depp lost the Golden Globe in his category to Hugh Grant, who won for 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And Hugh Grant was on the rise at this point, right? I mean, arguably a bigger star at that time than Depp himself.
How?
Exactly.
I can't even get 4 Weddings and a Funeral. We're talking like, this feels like another dimension to me, talking about these movies now. It's 2024. This is, there's no equivalence to these. How can these be big movies?
You look at
this is mind-blowing.
Look at just the movies. You want to talk about how different it is in this era. 5 years down the road, you have the Oscars of 1999, and it's such a bizarre collection of movies that won awards that year, from American Beauty to Magnolia to Boys Don't Cry.
You have the Weinstein effect fully engaged at that point, right?
Yeah, but even so, it felt like the little guys were sitting there shoulder to shoulder with some of the big guys, right?
Yeah, that was the Weinstein effect, right? He bought the fucking awards, right?
Right. It just, there was a lot riskier. I guess the way to say it now is that movies then felt like you were participating in them. Movies now feel like I'm being told a bedtime story, and I'm just there to be told something, and if I pay attention or not, then it's fine. But here, this required.
I agree. That's how you get these human movies back then, like these smaller movies that have a cultural effect, and we all talked about them, and doesn't happen now.
And there wasn't so. I mean, there were movies that had the promotional blitz that was really perfected by Batman, and then carried on to the zenith point of Phantom Menace.
Sure. There's always going to be big movies. I mean, you're right. You're right. Like this, even back then, was like the build up to what we have now.
Right.
Of course, yeah, that absolutely existed. But we just. It's not so much what we have; it's what we don't have, right? That makes a difference. Like we can't. You think about this movie. I mean, what we're talking about right now, Ed Wood. Like in the past 20 years, who would be the Ed Wood that you would make the movie about now? I mean, nobody.
Roland Emmerich.
That's messed up, man.
Well, that guy's got global hits.
That's the wrong German. That's the wrong German.
They're all the wrong Germans. Trust me.
You know it's Uwe Boll.
Only Patrick Wall's a good one. All right, so the fact of the matter is, though, that this movie, if it came out today, would appear as it would be produced by one of the streamers, because no actual studio
right.
will put money behind this. So this would appear as a tile on one of your streaming services.
It would be black and white still, though.
It would be. Fine. It would be.
It would totally be Netflix and it would be black and white, right? Or it would be Apple Plus and it would be black and white. Whatever it would be, it would clearly be a shot at prestige and a shot at an Oscar, right? That's what it would be.
It might even have David Fincher behind the camera directing it or something like that.
It would have huge musical score, big swells. It would like
$160 million budget.
Yeah, it would not be the intimate portrait of Ed Wood that this movie is. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely not. And it would be a tile on your streaming service that after a week you would never even think about again. Whereas this thing has stood the test of time. And even on incarnations, I've seen it on VHS, pan and scan, to this beautiful streaming digital copy that we have now. It's the movie, the message, everything translate. It's not necessarily the presentation of it. It's the human story in the acting, in the writing, and all the filmmaking elements that come together to present an emotional experience that usually if you get one or two of those things in a movie now, if it's writing or acting, you feel lucky. This movie has almost every department coming together to produce a certain spirit and feeling. And that's why I think it's so special about this movie and why I do return to it, every 5 to 10 years.
Well, yeah. And like Bowfinger, it's a movie about hope, right? Like where they're,
can do.
It's just hopeful. Like, yeah. And you got to get in there, do the work, and you'll, I don't know, create art, have something that's meaningful to you. I don't know. It's just it makes you feel good, really, to watch this movie, even though he goes through a lot of shit and I don't know, things aren't so great.
Well, it's
by the end of this movie, but still,
sounds, this is an American dream type movie, right? This is a guy who,
that's a good point. Yeah, it is.
Who's going to pull himself through the bootstraps, who's going to make something of himself out of nothing, and won't stop. I mean, he has that can-do attitude and gives it the old college try, if you will,
Won't stop, can't stop.
And even while people are just saying no, no, no. I want to talk quickly here about some of the other performances before we sign off here. And most notably, who I think is great in this movie, and really to me was the first time I saw him in anything outside of his blockbusters, is Bill Murray. I mean, Bill Murray is... Why did he take this role? I have no idea, but he quietly steals every scene that he is in, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he is pretty funny. I do like when he's gonna go get the sex change, but then he's like, "I'm going to Mexico to get my sex change."
Right.
Like, okay. And then the next time we see him, he's like, "What happened to your sex change?" And he's like, "Got into a car accident.
Mexico was a disaster."
Yeah, Mexico was a disaster. Got into a car accident. He died. Whatever. His boyfriend died and shit. He's like, "They lost our luggage."
The doctor was a quack.
The doctor was a quack.
He's like, "But I brought back these lovely gentlemen." And he's got a mariachi band behind him.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. It is funny.
I mean, or when Ed Wood's first of all, they're at a wrestling match. Ed Wood, his girlfriend or his wife, right, and the Bill Murray character, and they're all there looking for different things, obviously. And when they're reading a negative review they got, and Bill Murray tries to comfort him by saying, "Oh, that reviewer, what is that, oh queen? No." And I just love the way he delivers that line. It's protective. It's a great line reading of something that could have been just a throwaway, but how he does it, it's protecting Eddie. It's putting down that other person. It's, you can do this. I can't explain it. It's perfectly well done by him. Mm-hmm. Also, Jeffrey Jones as Griswold. I love him in this. You see him now, and the personal stuff that's gone on with him and the legal problems he's had, and it's always uncomfortable to see him on screen now. But he's in so many good movies from back in the 80s. Like, what are you going to do? But he's really good in this. I think the person that doesn't score for me is Patricia Arquette. Seems a little muted in all of the madness going around in this. So I know that's maybe how it's supposed to be because she's the solid center to Ed Wood's craziness, but in a movie of nuts, she comes off as bland and fairly forgettable. In fact, I forgot she was in this movie until I rewatched it.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. What do we say? Right? I don't know. Great cast, though. You're right, and it goes beyond that, right? We have the guy that plays Tor Johnson's pretty good.
Yeah,
right?
George the Animal Steel.
George Steele.
Yeah.
He's great. I mean, Juliet Landau's in this.
Max Casella from Doogie Howser.
I don't know if you know that. Yeah, well, Juliet Landau plays Drusilla in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But I don't know if you saw that far.
I don't know if I saw
but
that.
She's great in it. And like I just said before, Max Casella. Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's a bunch of familiar faces, right?
Also, Lisa Marie, who's
Tim
Burton's fiance at the time, as Vampira.
Vampira.
And Vampira was a lot hotter than I remember her being in real life in this movie. And I love the scenes where where Bela Lugosi is trying to hypnotize her and come to Bella and all that shit. And the fact that she is totally dismissive of Wood until she needs the money is on her last chance to do anything in Hollywood.
Yeah, wasn't that pretty consistent amongst like almost every character in here? Like the Loretta character, the Juliet Landau plays, is giving money to star in the movie, right? You have Ed Wood himself, who's lying to people to get them to give him money to be in the movie. I mean, Bella. I get the feeling that Lugosi understands a lot more than he's letting on to, and just doesn't give a shit. Because
he likes the attention.
But there's plenty of times where Ed Wood, who is pretty stupid in this, says some shit or whatever, and Martin Landau will just get that look like, the fuck. So I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of all the characters kind of feed off each other and kind of take advantage of each other. I don't know what that's supposed to mean or whatnot.
Thematically is.
They are kind of a community, but at the same time, I don't know. They're kind of cutthroat.
Yeah, there is a hierarchy, and Ed seems to be there because Bella doesn't want to embarrass him in front of the crew. But like you said, he's been on real productions at that point, and he knows that this is far from a real production, but it's also his last chance.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, when they meet Criswell, and he's like, I predict that man will be on Mars by whatever, and Ed Wood goes, really? Wow, that's amazing. This Lugosi just goes, holy fuck, Well, this guy's a fucking idiot.
When they're drinking later, and he asks the guy, he goes, how did you know that? How did you know it was going to happen? He goes, it's horse shit. We're in show business.
I made it up. Yeah.
He goes, huh?
He's like, oh.
Because he's willing to believe.
Right, which is the brainworm, the idea that Ed Wood should lie to people, right? Well, so he's like this innocent boy in a way who's corrupted, I guess, by Hollywood. Does that make any sense? Well, is that what it is?
Well, he was also he's not too innocent. I mean, when he gets there,
obviously, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of a weird. It's a weird dynamic, I guess. Of these characters, but I guess when you have a motley crew, you get some unsavory characters, and maybe everyone's a little unsavory, at this level. Everyone's trying to make it or break it, right?
Well, what I saw too in this character is, just like as with all great salespeople, he can be easily sold. A lot of people sell him very easily too, and kind of bamboozle him.
Wants to buy into the dream a little too quickly, a little too easily.
And Loretta King character who does I only have $300. Right. That's all the money in the world. That's a great sequence there too, because now what are you gonna do?
Yeah, right. He thought he had a cash cow there.
And that's such an awkward scene when he goes up to her and asks for the money. Can you fucking imagine being on a set and having to deal with something like that? How do you direct an actress who's paying for the whole thing? And there's shit like that really happens.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm really glad we went back and watched this. It had been at least 10 years since I had seen this. I think I may have saw that DVD release maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah. Now. It has been that long. Last time I watched this was when it had been on DVD.
There you go. And this really cleans up nicely with this digital out there that if you haven't seen it, the digital print out there now is beautiful. The black and whites they're so dark and just crisp. Everything looks so fucking crisp in this movie. There's no one sweats ever in this movie, even if it's hot out. You ever noticed that? Everything is perfect. No one's ever disheveled or anything.
There's a lot of makeup, You can kind of see that there's a lot of it's shot. It's literally true to what a 50s kind of a B movie would be shot like.
Yeah, thick
even
makeup.
lit like thick makeup, but also the lighting is, you might say it's poor.
Harsh.
Harsh. Yes, that would be the word.
Yeah, harsh, but it's specifically made to be like
true to life, and kind of, and in that way, kind of beautiful,
Yeah, there's a lot of and fun to spot the people that pop up in roles. Vincent D'Onofrio's pops up as Orson Welles in there towards the end. It's fun to see him in there, and just that sometimes they'll tell, "Oh, we had such a great time making this movie." Well, that must have been fucking great for you guys, but it doesn't translate to the screen. Where I don't know how the production was of this, but it seems like everybody was having a fucking blast doing this and was absolutely was on the same page with one another, because tonally everybody gets it right. I love this movie. I really do. I think this is Depp's best work. Maybe Fear and Loathing is comparable, but outside of that, and to me, Fear and Loathing, he took that character and just put a pirate and spin on it and a little bit more sexually ambiguous and made it Jack Sparrow.
He's very much himself in pretty much every movie, to be fair. I think most people are, but this is one of the better movies, I think. Probably Tim Burton's best movie, easily.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I grew up loving the Batman movies he did, and Beetlejuice, and the classics.
Absolutely.
But he's made some clunkers in his career, but this one to me was the closest he got to being a real, filmmaker.
The most human story. Yeah, it's definitely, he definitely captures something here that the other movies just don't capture, like the human side of things that like this has to it. I don't know. Like I just say, that Glinda Glinda scene where with Bela Lugosi giving his monologue is just in and of itself fucking amazing.
It is fantastic. And it's
really great.
And the way they shoot it is beautiful too. It's slow pushing on it. And it's exactly, I think it's covered how they covered it in the Ed Wood movie, but the scene itself and how everyone gets wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
Because you get wrapped up in it. I don't know. I was really glad we looked at this one. Anything else you want to add to our episode here?
No, I think people should watch this movie. You should watch some Ed Wood movies. I've never read one of his books. Have you?
No.
No. Yeah, I don't even know what they are. So
the closest I came was to reading How to Make a Movie book by the guy from Troma. What was his name?
Oh, Lloyd Kaufman.
There you go. Who's very
well. He's written 2 of them. So
which
one did you read?
I think it's How to Make Your Damn Movie or something like that.
They're both very good.
And first of all, he would be the closest thing we have to an Ed Wood type right now.
You would be, yeah. I mean, you'd be right. I've been on. The only thing I'll say is, and I guess I might as well say this, but I've been on a full moon set with
Charles
Band before, and I believe Charles Band has been reborn lately, because the movies that they've been turning out have been fucking awesome. But back in the day, 15 years ago, it was like a fucking Ed Wood set. It really was. To the point where I remember specifically them shooting shit, and the actress going, "Well, what? I was doing it like this before. Should I do it like that again?" And him being like, "I don't care." She goes, "Well, what about continuity?" And he's just like, "We'll fix it in post. Don't worry about it."
The Jim Wynorski effect.
It was just a very moment, like an Ed Wood moment of like, we got it. Just do it.
In real life, she would struggle with that problem every day.
Yeah, right. It's fine. No one cares. Just go.
What was the documentary we watched years ago about Jim Wynorski, the B movie maker, and he was making like a
Papadopoulos.
There you go. And it was a sequence where he had 3 girls.
The Witches of
Brestwick.
Brestwick. I can't get it out.
Part 3, I think.
I believe it was the 3rd one. Amazing movie. TerraVision just released the Blu-ray for anyone that's looking for it. Great fucking movie.
Are you talking about Papadopoulos or Witches of Brestwick? Okay. I thought you were talking about Witches of Brestwick 3 for a second.
None of his movies, none of his movies are they are what they are. But some of the stuff he's done under pseudonyms are pretty decent. But
I like Return of Swamp Thing and Deathstalker too, both by Wynorski by his real name.
Absolutely. But they are they're B movie. I don't know. What do you say? You know, they're what they are. But this one's worse than that. He's made lots of stuff that's bottom level.
When that Papadopoulos, and they're showing a scene he's shooting for the Witches of Brestwick 3, and he's got these 3 girls tied up to a tree, and they're supposed to be having fire, people approaching with fire, and instead of what he uses for lighting is flashlights, people holding flashlights, waving them at them, and one of the lead actresses absolutely loses her shit and says, "When did you stop caring, Jim?" I just loved that sequence.
They do that. It's like we're gonna fake fire today or whatever. And then they had like the reflectors. It was like fire colored or something.
It was awful.
I was just trying to do the worst shit in the world. Yeah, that is a fun movie. It's a documentary, obviously, but fun movie. I guess in the vein of this, in the vein of low budget movies.
Not as fun as American movie, but still fun.
No, not as fun as that. But that movie has characters that.
American movie.
Find that in real life again,
every
right?
scene is memorable and quotable, including when he gets the credit card and goes, "America, fucking A."
Man, I have so much. My life sucks right now. I have so much credit card debt. Next scene. Oh, American Express. What was it? Oh, MasterCard. Fucking A, man. Yeah. We're back on. We're making a movie.
He's still paying off the debt. If you haven't seen American Movie, check that out before you watch anything else. That's one of the best movies made in the 90s. And
recently re-released on Blu-ray.
Somehow
minus
overlooked.
The fucking Coven, though.
Oh, they should have the Coven extra on it. Maybe
And it's not Coven.
Oh, it's Coven.
That rhymes with oven, and that's
right.
fucking stupid.
Come on, man.
So it's Coven. That's how you say it.
The horror, the horror. It's all
so there's that. But if anyone's interested, if you do follow Mark on Twitter, they sell. I have one here. He'll sell signed copies of VHS Coven. It's fucking awesome.
Excellent. And I highly recommend that. Highly recommend this Ed Wood movie, too, if you haven't seen it. For any of the movies that we've talked about today, the majority of them are out there free on YouTube. If any of these Ed Wood movies from Plan 9 or Glenn or Glenda,
all on there, yeah.
If you want to go back and watch it. And a fun thing to do is if you do see Ed Wood, this movie, and you go back and look at some of the real life clips on just how exacting the artists were in this movie to get things right. It's very impressive.
Do you think that's how... I mean, do you think home video and cable television is what made Ed Wood?
Probably because, well, the late
time
shows
in the 90s and stuff. Well, I'm just thinking of all the $1 DVDs of Plan 9, you know.
I mean, there used to be...
existed, right? There was just tons of them. Like, Plan 9 has to be, like, the most put on DVD. That and, like, Night of the Living Dead. But just $1, like, Plan 9s. And I do remember seeing Bride of the Monster as well, but...
I would say I would put Cold Sweat, that Charles Bronson movie, in there with that as well.
That one was everywhere for $1. Cold Sweat, Dead Calm.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, there were some staples. But Plan 9 was one of them, right? So is that in some way, is that why he was some revere? But it can't be really, because people had to have known about him.
Yeah, I would say that.
From before. So where'd that come from? TV?
Or he had a PR person that was putting it out there. The worst director, if you can't be the best, maybe the worst director. So you get some sort of interest that people will go see it and mock it. Or is it the late shows, the creature feature hours and things like that, over the time that,
like on TV, is that where it came from? It had to come from somewhere, right? I wonder where. Because there's so many movies. Obviously you got a lot of cable TV movies, and that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, how many movies were you exposed to
stuff were on there
through things like USA's Up All Night and things like that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there were plenty of that type of stuff, but did that exist in like the 70s?
Oh yeah, they had creature features, just like the guy, Fright Night's based off a real
absolutely,
guy.
They did. I mean, Vampira, they had Elvira and all that kind of stuff. In the up until early 90s, right? Obviously, I mean, what you're saying, USA Up All Night would have been a brand of that. So, yeah, I guess that's where you would have been introduced to Ed Wood, right? Like where Tim Burton probably would have been introduced to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they played these things on afternoon television, too, after school. And, just easy, probably cheap as shit to replay these kind of movies. And
well, in that case, having Bela Lugosi in the movies is probably what made the difference, right?
Yeah, because it was a name, right? So it was a sellable thing.
And he had Vampira. I mean, obviously, I guess Plan 9 had everyone in it, so that would make sense that's the biggest one out of all of them. So he's right. A star is better than tits.
I wonder. Way to round that out, my friend. They're a nice callback.
See how that did it? A little bookends there right on the shot.
I wonder if getting Bela Lugosi in this movie is akin to getting like a Bruce Willis in your B movie towards the end of his career, or what an Eric Roberts
yes,
today.
It would be. And I was thinking, I literally and actually thought of Bruce Willis as the example of that today as well. Like, who would be the Bela Lugosi? And I thought, well, it would be like a Bruce Willis, right? And it would be like a Mel Gibson, I guess, or a or that would be it. There's not a lot. Well,
I guess if he was a strung out guy, it would be like a Tom Sizemore. Would be probably more appropriate before he passed away.
He was in a bunch of stuff. That's why I can't think of. I mean, what? Just the Asylum? All Asylum movies are Ed Wood movies.
Oof.
I mean, Eric Roberts.
There's some good Asylum movies, though. To be honest, here and there, including ones with Antonio Sabato Jr.
I mean, the Ed Wood level movies.
They are, but that's sometimes I want to watch an Ed Wood level movie, like Ed Wood Jr. Not this movie. Like I want to watch something. With low ambitions and low expectations for it.
And so the Asylum's great, but that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess at that point, low budget filmmaking has never been more accepted than it is today, right? To be honest with you, actually, because a lot of these guys who are Ed Wood level today have followings. They sell their movies to. I'm one of them. I'll admit. Hi, my name is Trevor. I buy bad movies on questionable websites. It's not porn, guys.
Keep telling yourself that.
No, it's not as good as porn. That's interesting.
It'd be cheaper to find if it was porn.
It would just be free,
That's funny. Well, that's going to wrap up our episode on Ed Wood. Thank you guys for joining us on this look back to the 1994 classic with Johnny Depp, directed by Tim Burton. Speaking for Trevor Anderson, I am Jason Rugard, and we are the Movie Mavericks.